So, from a political standpoint, I ask again, will the Republicans' self-defeating spending habits blow the Senate election? Is it blowable? Here to talk about it, my dear friend, Kellyanne Conway, former counselor to President Trump, author of Here's the Deal. Kellyanne, I'm an optimist. I'm doing the best I can night after night after night. But the Republican Party, I think, is, at least the senators, they seem to have lost their way, lost their message. They want to spend all this money picking winners and losers and giving Solyndra-like slush funds to various agencies. I mean, what's going on here? And is there a danger? I'm not worried about the House, but as the Senator, what do you think about this?
Larry, any one bill aside, there is a danger for the Republican Party to not be seen as the party of fiscal sanity and solvency. That's who they were always seen. We always had an advantage on national security. We had an advantage on fiscal sanity and solvency. And, you know, you were there because you were a big part of it for the Tax Cut and Jobs Act within the first year of the Trump-Pence administration. That was so demonstrative in terms of what is the big difference between the two parties. One wants to create wealth and growth, repatriate the money that's overseas, give everyone, employers and employees and families and individuals, a tax break, and on and on. Now, that with the regulatory agenda, plus trying to shave the runaway spending. And I think of those three pillars, the taxes and growth, the regulatory agenda, and the spending, I think the spending is where some Republicans have clearly lost their way. I understand there are natural disasters. We had COVID, all that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about now. You see some of the same logic being put forward by some of these Republican senators as to why they need to support this particular bill in the semiconductor, quote unquote, chips, versus it was very similar to what they said about infrastructure. And that, of course, is not even a popular bill now to most Americans. Larry, it's very simple, too. You know, in 1994, I was a baby pollster when Newt Gingrich had his contract with America. Over 300 candidates signed that contract on the steps of the Capitol on September 27th that year, right before 6 weeks before the election. They won a landslide. The first time Republicans had control of the House and Senate in 50 years or so. Why is this important? Well, one of the biggest pieces of the contract with America was a balanced budget amendment. And the reason people liked the idea of a balanced budget is it made them feel that the federal government had spending and control. So Newt's House and Bob Dole's Senate, along with Bill Clinton, Democratic president, signed that into law. This was a time when people just didn't say the way that you solve a problem is by spending. Now, these Senate races are tight. The Republican candidates are being outspent in these key races in Arizona, in Georgia, possibly in Pennsylvania, Ohio. These races are tight. And if you give away, if you cede and relinquish your advantage on key issues at a time when security and affordability are the top two issues to voters, you're putting yourself in a little bit of an unforced error, perilous kind of territory.
I agree. I mean, that's my take. You're more attenuated to the political thing, but that's my take. I've seen polls, government spending, you know, inflation, gas prices, but people don't like government spending. And I think balanced budget, by the way, which they're not talking about in the Senate.
Nobody says it anymore.
Would be very popular. I mean, very popular. Newt is pushing that. I agree. You know, we got a project going with our friend Russ Vought and myself and some of the AFPI and Steve Moore. I mean, I think a balanced budget principle would be very popular, but not this. This is like, you know, Solyndra to the 100th power. Anyway, let me ask you, before I lose you, let me ask a couple of things. This whole fiasco in New York with our friend Lee Zeldin, Congressman Zeldin, who's attacked in upstate New York outside of Rochester, and the attacker, the would-be assassin, is immediately released. No bail, no jail, right? And to me, that is the whole story with the problem of New York State, but probably the rest of the country, too.
Yes. Larry, there's no question. Thank God Lee is safe, and thank God people move very swiftly. However, the irony here is that if you elect Lee Zeldin against the terrible accidental governor, Kathy Hochul, who was just Andrew Cuomo's lieutenant governor, then you will put an end to what happened. This guy was held for about 6 hours. Maybe he belongs in a mental institution. That's not for me to judge. But he can't be loose on the streets. This ticking time bomb of somebody who would actually go and could have hurt him, let alone killed him, God forbid. Let's just review quickly what's happening in our big cities. Crime is up 25%. The broken window theory is in full force and effect, if you ask me. If they don't prosecute the petty larcenies, the robberies we all see on our TV screens, then you're encouraging and incentivizing the criminals to do even more. In New York, the law meant that because Lee Zeldin had the presence of mind to stop the man from actually physically harming him, the man got to go free, cashless bail. But folks, here are the names. It's Carl Beastie, it's Kathy Hochul, it's people like Alvin Bragg and the prosecutors. They're for decarceration, cashless bail. They have promised not to prosecute certain crimes. And look, I think murders are up something like 35% in New York City this year. I know Mayor Adams ran on a law and order, reduced crime. He was with the police force years ago agenda. And I got to tell you, when you hear from President Trump tomorrow, his first voyage back to Washington, D.C. since he left office, Larry, I think he's going to emphasize crime and public safety quite a bit at the America First Policy Institute Summit, because this is very much on people's minds, whether it's border security, national security, or security in our neighborhoods. People are upset. Fentanyl is the #1 killer of 18 to 49-year-olds. Crime is on the rise, and the criminals are just very brazen. They do it right in front of the cameras for everyone to see. They know they do it with impunity.
Lee Zeldin, by the way, you asked me, is the last hope for New York. I mean, it's just the last hope. Last one, Kellyanne. Were you surprised this Turning Point USA Student Summit, their straw poll gave President Trump, former President Trump, 78.7%. Mr. DeSantis, Governor DeSantis, second place, 19%. At a time when you know, a lot of liberal pundits and so forth, Washington Post, Politico, are all talking about how President Trump's getting weaker. This is a pretty strong number from younger people. I just wondered what your thought was on this.
Indeed. Larry, these straw polls are illustrative in this way. These are folks who are so committed or so passionate they show up at conferences like that. So you know they're going to vote, and they're going to get other people to vote. They're very involved. I think the poll is significant for President Trump because Governor DeSantis did speak on Friday night. He was well received. He's an unbelievably successful and consequential governor of Florida. But it's President Trump who led in the polls, and I think it shows you that people are projecting an economic pessimism that's going to have an electoral reality. What do I mean? It's not just that people are saying, this is America, we're resilient, we're hopeful it will get better. They're saying it was a heck of a lot better not that long ago. How do we get those policies back? I think if President Trump decides to run and formally declares his candidacy, it will be a bit of a field clearer. If he decides not to run, whoever does, all of them, Larry, and there will be dozens, they will all be running on the America First agenda. You know that, on energy independence, on growth, on lower taxes, on national security, on parents having a right to say where their kids go to school and what is taught there, the whole kit and caboodle. But I did think that was a big boost for President Trump.
Yeah.
Donors are great people. They're great people, but they don't decide who the nominees are. The people decide who the nominees are. And I think that was part of the straw poll, too.
That's a very good point. People decide. You're right. We love donors. We love DeSantis, by the way. I'm
love
just
them all.
interested.
Oh, he's a great governor.
He's a smart guy.
It was fascinating.
Doing a good job.
It was fun.
Just
Listen,
took a
he
whack
can be
at
a
the
two-term.
communists.
And he's got a great sense for the cultural warrior part too. Ron DeSantis can be the best two-term governor in Florida in modern history, and run for president before he's 50.
Okay, Kellyanne, I will see you at the FBI tomorrow. Kellyanne
Can't wait.
Conway.
Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.